Imagine a time when your Halloween costume was made from old bed sheets, and your biggest haul of the night included homemade popcorn balls. From the wholesome fun of the 1950s to the pop culture explosion of the 1980s, here's a look back at Halloween nostalgia, 40 years of trick-or-treating. The 1950s marked a period of post-war prosperity, and Halloween celebrations were deeply rooted in community and family. For most kids, the spooky season began not at a big box store, but in the classroom. Schools were central hubs for Halloween excitement, with teachers leading arts and crafts projects where students would create paper black cats, witches, and jack-o'-lanterns to decorate the walls. These activities often culminated in a school-wide costume parade, a chance for everyone to show off their creative and almost always handmade outfits. At home, the festivities continued with traditions that brought the whole family together. Pumpkin carving was a cherished ritual, with families gathering around the kitchen table to design spooky or smiling faces. The scooped-out pumpkin seeds weren't thrown away. They were seasoned and roasted in the oven, filling the house with a warm, nutty aroma that became synonymous with the season. Decorations were simple but effective. Orange and black crepe paper streamers were twisted together and draped across living rooms, and clever accordion-style paper pumpkins served as popular centerpieces. Halloween parties were very common and were usually small gatherings with friends and neighbors. These parties featured classic games like bobbing for apples, scavenger hunts, and rounds of ghost stories that sent shivers down everyone's spine. Costumes in the 1950s were a testament to ingenuity. While you could buy a simple mask from the local 5 and dime store, the rest of the outfit was typically assembled from items found around the house. A cowboy might be outfitted with a plaid shirt and a toy gun, while a princess could wear her fanciest party dress. A ghost was easily made with a white sheet and a pair of scissors, and a convincing old lady could be created by stuffing a pillow under a house dress and dusting some talcum powder into a child's hair. When it was finally time for trick-or-treating, kids would head out in groups, often without parental supervision, to roam their familiar neighborhoods. The treats they received were a mix of homemade goodies like popcorn balls and decorated cookies, along with penny candies, nuts, and even whole fruits like apples. As America moved into the 1960s, Halloween began to transform. While many of the wholesome traditions of the 50s remained, a wave of commercialization and pop culture influence started to change the holiday's landscape. This was the decade that saw the rise of the store-bought costume, thanks in large part to a company named Ben Cooper Incorporated. These iconic costume kits, often sold in a simple box with a cellophane window, became a staple of the era. They typically included a thin, plastic mask held on by a flimsy elastic band, and a vinyl smock printed with a colorful illustration of the character. The masks were notoriously uncomfortable, with tiny slits for eyes and a small hole for breathing, but they allowed the kids to transform into their favorite cartoon and television heroes. The influence of pop culture didn't stop with costumes. In 1962, Bobby Boris Pickett released Monster Mash, a novelty song that became an instant Halloween anthem. The song was a massive hit and could be heard blaring from radios and at Halloween parties throughout the decade, perfectly capturing the fun, spooky spirit of the holiday. The 1960s also saw the emergence of the commercial haunted house as a popular attraction. While church groups and community centers had been creating small-scale haunted houses for years, Disneyland took the concept to a new level with the opening of its Haunted Mansion in 1969. This highly detailed, professional attraction set a new standard for Halloween scares and inspired a nationwide boom in haunted attractions that would continue for decades to come. Many of the handmade elements of the holiday persisted, but the seeds of a more commercialized and pop culture-driven Halloween had been firmly planted. The 1970s marked a significant turning point for Halloween, as the holiday began to shed some of its wholesome, childlike innocence and embrace a darker, edgier tone. This shift was heavily influenced by Hollywood, which entered a golden age of horror films. Movies like The Exorcist, 1973, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974, and John Carpenter's Halloween, 1978, terrified audiences and brought a new level of genuine fear to the season. The fun, campy monsters of the past were replaced by something far more sinister, and this new, scarier aesthetic began to permeate the holiday. This decade also saw an explosion in licensed character costumes, driven by blockbuster films. When Star Wars was released in 1977, characters like Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, and Princess Leia became some of the most sought-after costumes of the year. Ben Cooper and other companies capitalized on this trend, producing costumes for a wide range of movie, TV, and cartoon characters. However, the 1970s also brought a new and lasting fear to Halloween, the urban legend of tampered candy. Widespread, though largely unsubstantiated, stories of strangers putting poison or razor blades in Halloween treats created a wave of panic among parents. This stranger danger anxiety forever changed the tradition of trick-or-treating. Parents began supervising their children more closely, and homemade treats became a thing of the past. The only safe candy was now the prepackaged, individually wrapped kind, and many communities and hospitals even began offering free x-rays of candy bags to put parents' mind at ease. While the scares were now more real than ever, the spirit of Halloween continued, albeit with a new layer of caution. By the time the 1980s arrived, Halloween had become a full-blown cultural phenomenon. This was the decade of excess, and Halloween was no exception. Pop culture's influence reached its peak, with kids dressing up as characters from some of the biggest franchises in history. Ghostbusters, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and the Star Wars sequels provided endless costume inspiration. Beloved toys like the Care Bears and Cabbage Patch dolls also became popular choices, with their distinctive looks replicated in mass-produced costumes. Music also played a huge role, with pop stars like Madonna and Boy George inspiring countless lookalikes with their unique and flamboyant styles. The classic Ben Cooper plastic masks and vinyl smocks were still around, but they were now joined by more realistic, full-headed rubber masks, allowing for even more impressive transformations. One of the most iconic Halloween innovations of the decade came from an unlikely source: McDonald's. In 1986, the fast food chain introduced its Halloween Happy Meal pails. These plastic pumpkin-shaped buckets were an instant hit and became a must-have accessory for trick-or-treaters. While kids still used pillowcases, the Halloween pail became the new standard for candy collection. The teenage tradition of Halloween pranks also reached its zenith in the 80s. The night before Halloween, often called Mischief Night, was a time for toilet papering trees and egging houses, a rite of passage for many suburban teens. The fear of tampered candy lingered, so parental supervision and candy inspection were now standard practice. The 1980s combined the commercialism of the 70s with an explosion of pop culture, creating a vibrant and unforgettable era for Halloween. So, if you could bring back one Halloween tradition from the past, what would it be? Drop a comment down below to tell us your favorite spooky memory.